You know, Avengers Infinity War. It wasn't just another superhero movie, was it? No way. This was something else entirely. We're talking about the massive payoff to a 10-year, 18-film experiment in storytelling. It was, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, a true cultural event for an entire decade. And boy, did the world respond. Just look at that number. Over $2 billion at the worldwide box office. That's not just a big number, that's a statement. It really shows you what a cultural force this thing became, cementing its place in movie history for sure. But here's the really wild part, when you think about it. The superhero genre is built on one simple rule, right? The good guys win. So how on earth did a movie where the villain doesn't just win, but unequivocally wins, snapping his fingers and wiping out half of all life, become one of the biggest blockbusters ever? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to piece together today. Okay, so to really get how they pulled this off, we have to start by looking at the absolutely monumental challenge the filmmakers were up against. This thing was basically an impossible movie to make. I mean, you have to remember, this wasn't just another sequel. It was the payoff, the promise that was made all the way back in 2008 with Iron Man. Marvel spent a decade meticulously building this shared universe. They proved the whole crazy idea could work with the Avengers in 2012. Then they blew it wide open into space with Guardians in 2014. And it was every single film, leading up to this one epic collision. Seriously, just try to put yourself in the shoes of the screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. The job they had was, well, it was basically unwinnable. You've got over 20 main characters to juggle. You have to somehow merge 4 or 5 completely different storylines and tones. You have to pay off a villain who's been teased for years, all while the audience's expectations are through the absolute roof. Oh, and by the way, make your nearly 3-hour movie feel like a sprint, not a marathon. Good luck with that. So, how in the world did they solve this impossible puzzle? Well, their solution was as brilliant as it was radical. They decided to just go ahead and break the biggest rule of all superhero movies. They flipped the whole script. Instead of making the heroes the center of the story, they built the entire movie around the villain. Thanos isn't just reacting, he's the one driving every single beat of the plot forward. But that raises a huge question, right? How do you make the bad guy your main character and not have the audience just check out? The answer is you stop thinking of him as just a villain. You make him a complex protagonist. See, in storytelling, the protagonist is simply the character whose goals drive the narrative forward. They don't have to be the good guy. And in Infinity War, that person is 100% Thanos. The whole movie, it's his story. We're just watching it unfold. Now, what really unlocked this whole approach was one key, brilliant change they made from the comics. In the comics, Thanos' motivation is, well, it's kind of weird. He's basically a nihilist trying to impress the literal embodiment of death who he's in love with. The filmmakers looked at that and said, yeah, no. Instead, they gave him this twisted utilitarian philosophy born out of real trauma from his home planet. In his mind, he's not the villain. He's the savior. And that single change, that changes everything. So once you have Thanos as this protagonist with a clear, if completely terrifying philosophy, you can build the whole movie around one central conflict. It's his worldview crashing directly against the fundamental moral code of the heroes. And that entire heroic code, their whole reason for being, is boiled down to this one perfect line from Captain America. We don't trade lives. That's it. That's the movie. It's not just about punching. It's a battle of ideas. Thanos is pure utilitarianism. The ends justify the means. But the Avengers, they believe you can't sacrifice your principles, that you don't trade a single life, even to save the universe. And you see this theme play out over and over again with almost every single Infinity Stone. The heroes are constantly being put in this impossible position. Loki gives up the Space Stone to save Thor. Gamora gives up the Soul Stone's location to save Nebula from torture. Doctor Strange gives up the Time Stone to save Tony. Every single time, they choose the person over the prize. It's the exact opposite of Thanos, who's willing to sacrifice literally anyone, even the daughter he loves, to achieve his goal. So what happens when you take this massive risk? When you make the villain your protagonist and build the whole story around this deep moral conflict? Well, it didn't just work creatively. It led to something huge, a cultural and financial phenomenon that we're still talking about. I mean, this movie didn't just meet expectations, it completely obliterated them. It shattered the record for the biggest domestic opening weekend ever at the time. We're talking over $257 million in just its first 3 days. As you can see, that just blew the other Avengers movies right out of the water. And to pull off a story this ambitious, this galactic, you need the technical firepower to back it up. The movie has a staggering 2,680 individual visual effects shots. And these weren't just for show. Every one of those shots was crucial to making you believe in the scale of the conflict, and most importantly, the emotional reality of Thanos' terrifying mission. But let's be real, the thing that cemented this movie in our minds forever was that ending. An ending that did what we all thought was impossible. Thanos snapped his fingers, and we all just sat there, stunned, watching our favorite heroes, Spider-Man, Black Panther, just turn to dust. The villain won. The movie ends with the heroes completely and utterly defeated. And that last shot, it's not some hero promising revenge. It's Thanos, peaceful and victorious, watching a sunset, his work done. That gut punch of an ending basically guaranteed that every single person in that theater was coming back for part 2. All of which brings us to one last big question. By taking this huge risk, by shifting the focus away from the good guys and giving the antagonist this clear, understandable, almost tragic journey, did Infinity War actually prove that sometimes the most compelling hero in your story can be a really, really well-written villain? Makes you think, doesn't it?